Show your support for the Untold Radio Network family of shows and join in on the conversation by using super stickers and super chats on YouTube. Got a question you want answered? Ask it live via a super chat and get real-time responses from our show's knowledgeable hosts and guests. Help keep the Untold Radio Network shows running strong. We need your support. Send your super chats and stickers now.
Well, you're on Untold Radio. This is Down South Anomalies, episode 41.
We are racing through that first year, aren't we?
We certainly are. My name's Jay Katz.
Aspasia.
And this is the Psychedelic Renaissance. We have an incredible gentleman
We've got
back.
Voytek back.
Highly credentialed.
Yep.
Masters in neuropsychopharmacist.
Pharmacology.
He's a pharmacist.
He is.
I don't know whether it's pharmacology or pharmacist, but you know, it's tomato, potato. Who knows? Who gives a damn?
The other day you said potato, tomato.
I know. I had my moments. So please excuse me.
No, that
you
just
are
makes it
one
all
with
much
the
more
proletariat
fun.
tonight,
Okay.
today, or lunchtime, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Look, it's been a very busy week,
It has.
especially on Capitol Hill
Oh,
with
yeah.
Congress and the UAP hearings.
Absolutely.
We're not going to go on that tonight.
No, not too much.
But please
but
go
not
to
at all.
episode
Mm.
50
Mm.
with Mysterious Library.
Oh, yeah.
with Dr.
They
Dean and
did a
Jason.
good roundup.
They did
Mm.
a great
Yeah,
insight.
absolutely.
Who's just sitting behind our whistleblowers on Capitol Hill.
Mhm,
Now,
mhm.
it's not just Jeremy Corbell.
No,
And it's not our old mate George Knapp from Class TV.
Yes, George.
It's some very interesting people that make you highly suspicious. And it really does feel like we're choking on the smoke from so many smoking guns at the moment. But it's interesting, entertaining, and sometimes enlightening, but a lot of double speak.
Absolutely.
So we thought, let's not bother with that. Everyone's bothering with that. That's it, mate.
Sorry.
Let's get back. That was an exciting pre-beginning.
I'm just preempting you
Yeah,
because you are going on and on.
Yeah. But
Sorry.
Anyway, look, it's really important that we get our man Voytek back tonight.
Yeah.
And we attended an astounding lecture he
We
did in Sydney
a couple
recently.
of weeks ago. Yeah, it was great.
And look, I think it's all about our perception.
Mhm.
And we will show tonight that we have grave deficits in the way we perceive our
Everything is about
three-dimensional reality.
perception. Yeah.
And Voytek is one of those few people you meet on your lifeline that you realize is doing this and motivated for all the right reasons.
Wouldn't that be on your timeline?
He cares about people.
So it's your lifeline.
Yeah, you're on episode 41, Down South Anomalies, the Psychedelic Renaissance, and this is Untold Radio.
It sure is.
Hey, so great to
Yeah,
have
we
you
are.
all with us, and so great to have you with us, Voytek. But before we begin, we always state that we are broadcasting on stolen land,
Yes, we are.
the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation,
Mhm.
and we want to acknowledge and give respect to elders past, present, and emerging.
Absolutely.
It's time that we had more than a voice, and it's time that we got off this landmass and gave it back to the original owners. That's not going to happen,
Clearly
but
not.
things may
Unfortunately.
change
Well-
if we take heed and enlightenment from our profound guest tonight.
Absolutely.
This gentleman was with us right at the beginning of this podcast.
Episode 6, I think it was.
Yeah, and
Mhm.
we are going to keep him close to our side because I think he's truly motivated to curb depression and to assist
People.
humanity in
Mhm.
going forward. And one of
Yes.
those ways is to unblock those jammed, crammed
Oh, those
information
neural
overload. Yeah,
pathways.
they are
Oh,
overloaded
you know.
in the world we've got today.
Actually, Voytek actually explained it really
Profoundly.
well, and so I was able to clearly understand it. You know, it was about skiing. When you ski down a slope. The run. And look, I'll let him explain it because
But
it's
most
his thing.
academics
yeah.
can't do that. You feel
No,
like you're in
no,
an
yeah.
elite club, and the
Well,
semantics are
yeah,
actually
you
trapping
don't
you
understand
and
what they're
blocking you
saying, but
from
yeah,
that.
yeah.
So, I mean, here we've got the unqualified, which is my wife and myself, and we've got the extraordinarily
Excuse me?
qualified. Now,
Yeah.
how do we term your credentials? Please tell us your background, who you are, and then we'll go into a little history about that, and then we're going to go into your lecture, which I'm really excited about.
Yeah.
I'll preface everything like you guys are great. Like I haven't met anyone like yourselves in Australia, and when I found out about you guys, I was just like, and I hadn't even in the UK, and it just really blew me away. And the community that you're running and the people who you've touched, it really
Emotionally, some physically, but yeah. Sorry.
But you know what? They are
You know what? I'm a
the
little bit overtired today, and when I get overtired,
cheeky.
I get a bit very cheeky. So
yeah, and we're sorry to interrupt
I'm
you.
there as well, like a little bit delirious. You know, like.
Those words, you've been working all day. You've
Yeah,
had
you
a really
have,
long day,
yeah.
so we appreciate your time. Just quickly,
Absolutely.
I want to say those words do more for us than anything else. They're an uplift.
Yeah.
But I must, in all respects, say to you that there are many people like us out there.
yeah, there are.
And Voytek, I think what you're doing
I
is
haven't come across any of
you're
them, but they're
building
there.
communities of like-minded people that will truly assist each other.
I'm very naughty today.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Come. So let's get your credentials, Voytek.
Okay.
So people that mightn't have met you before in episode 6 can go back there
They can.
after this, but they can also understand that you're coming from a very learned place when it comes to this subject.
Yes.
Well, yeah. So I'm just a boring pharmacist. So I went to a place in London called UCL, and I did pharmacy there. And then after about 10 years of practice, I got a special license from the government to start prescribing, specifically in the remit of neuropsychopharmacology. So looking at how medicines and psychology interact with the brain and change behaviors. And I was very lucky at that time to kind of experience the pre-psychedelic era, kind of classical mental health remedies, and then now what's going on. And since the 1st of July 2023, especially in Australia, the classification of these once illegal substances as prescribable medicines. They've been recognized, and it's the first in the world. And I'm so blessed to be here at this time where this transformative release of these medicines is occurring.
Isn't that fascinating that you actually call it the pre-psychedelic era? And I'd say it's really interesting that you use that term, because we are actually at a point in time where we're looking at what people are terming a psychedelic renaissance. And we, on my timeline, being one of the last of the baby boomers, we certainly had our psychedelic era, but it was prohibited.
Yes.
So I don't know if we could just step back in time before we get to this contemporary view of where we are now in 2023, and just explain to me why you think, as an academic, that era came up against so much blowback in its day, so much push.
Well, there's a slide I've got, which is, I think, on the 8th slide. It's essentially just a picture.
Do you want me to bring it up?
Yeah, that'd be useful. And
which one's that?
8.
Slide 8. And I think what's really important with this slide is
this one.
Yeah, if you look at the first patent by Merck in 1912, MDMA, which is it's known as ecstasy, it's not a classical psychedelic, although it's classified within the psychedelics. That was patented in 1912.
Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't realize it was so early. What would have been the motivation then in terms of manufacturing that drug and finding that drug? What would have there been their motivation back then?
Well, they
was
were just really interested in novel chemical entities. They knew that the pharmacological aspects of different medicines, and they were looking for different uses. And you can see, if you kind of fast forward through this, MDMA was painted in 1912, but then 1920, which was there's a chap called Aldous Huxley, and he actually coined the phrase psychedelics, mind manifesting.
And when did Huxley actually do that?
I think it was around about that time. So I'm not sure, actually. It's the 1950s, roundabout. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
It was a perception, and it was a letter correspondence with a friend of his, and they were trying to figure out the best name for it, and they came up with psychedelics. And he was very he used mescaline a lot.
Wow.
Right.
Yeah.
But
and he, you know, it mightn't be known to many people, but he actually on his deathbed, which was the same day that Kennedy
was assassinated, 22nd, no.
Wow.
23rd of November.
1963.
That's the day he died.
And he dosed on LSD.
Well, his wife gave him, a dose of LSD for him to
but you'd be aware of that,
Voytek.
Yeah, which and then fast forward to today, they're actually doing lots and lots of studies on palliative care, which is when people have a terminal diagnosis and they're going to die. The doctor's pretty sure that the prognosis is they're going to pass away. There is often a period of quite profound depression, and what they're finding is using psilocybin or the different psychedelics like LSD and what Aldous Huxley did really helps people.
And do you think that it's, in a sense, it's unblocking neural pathways that we've, through the society we live in, our conditioning, what's happening to us in terms of so much media thrust at us, that have become blocked in a sense? Do you think those?
Yeah, I mean, I'm giving these lectures at the moment over this, and it's quite lengthy to explain. But if I were to summarize it in a few sentences, it's what happens as we get older is our neural pathways harden, so it's more difficult for us to learn new things. And I started understanding this when I started thinking about when I was a child. The earliest memory I could think of was maybe when I was about 4 or 5. And the reason for that is when you're a child, you come out of your mother's womb, you see the world. You don't see the world as it is as at the moment, because you have no reference point. You're a slate wiped clean, and you've got to figure out the reference points in your reality. And as you progress, you kind of pick up different things. You pick up different shapes, different qualitative things, different colors, and it all adds. And then that builds as a kind of reference map of your reality. And then as you age, you can still change it when you're young. And they say neuroplasticity, this kind of change of these reference points in your perception, around about 35, it reduces and it gets harder, and how you see the world doesn't change as easily as it would before. And and where psychedelics come in is they can increase this neuroplasticity, so it can open, and it can help you look at the world with fresh eyes.
Now,
and also maybe change bad behaviors or behaviors that are not, helping you. They're actually hindering your, being well and living your best life. Yep. And so,
So, and then that rolls into depression, right? So a lot of depressive symptoms arise from ruminating thoughts. So getting stuck in these circular thought patterns going round and round and round. And that ruminating then triggers somatic feelings of being depressed. So, lots of different symptoms involved in that. And what this neuroplasticity can do is it can level that and give you a period of time, which they call integration. So when you take a psychedelic, and there's different psychedelics which induce different levels of neuroplasticity, you
Yep.
get
Right.
periods afterwards. And psilocybin is around about 2 weeks. Ibogaine, which is another psychedelic, is around about 4 weeks. And it's a period whereby you're extremely neuroplastic. And it means that you can address these bad behaviors. So I've seen a lot of patients and a lot of data around really bad habits like smoking. And people
Right.
take a high dose psychedelic, which they then do it with a therapist, and they do integration, and they stop.
Wow.
Right.
A lifetime of smoking, a lifetime of this thing, which is you feel like you need it, and it's actually killing you at the same time. And within one session, it can be stopped. So
That is remarkable.
in comparison to what we have now, which are things like nicotine replacement therapies, and I'm a smoking cessation counselor. I've been trained in it. The equivalent comparative rates, nothing does the same thing as what psychedelics can do with a good therapist. Full stop.
Or me.
Yeah, don't be like that.
Why?
Yeah, I need that therapy myself, but we'll get into that discussion a little later on. That
I was smoking for 22 years and then I just quit.
I smoked for 15.
Yeah. And I just went, you know what I said to myself? As soon as cigarettes hit $10 a packet, I'm quitting. They hit $10, that was it. Never smoked again.
Maybe just as an aside there.
Sorry?
$40 now.
70
For some.
now. Yeah. Yes.
And you know what? Can
Yeah.
I just say as an aside now, and for our US listeners and international listeners, I don't think they're suffering that extreme tax hike we've seen.
No, they're not.
As being used as a measure to stop people from smoking. And look, as an addictive personality myself, I know it doesn't work. And I've spent a lot of time as a drug and alcohol counselor, and it doesn't work. What it does is drives people underground.
Yeah.
And it means they go for the illegal tobacco market, or they start to steal things.
Yeah.
And, you know, it surprises me there that
Or they stop eating or stop taking medication. You know,
and you just said to me that basically, you know, that could be resolved in one session.
Yeah.
And you've got this huge policy where I can't see anything more than this is assisting the government financially, but is it really assisting the population?
No.
It feels like a bit of a class war to me. What's your opinion on that? Tax hiking, to use it as some way of stopping people from going there?
It's really rudimentary economics. In smoking cigarettes is what they call an inelastic product, meaning if you change the price, it's not going to change the demand a lot. It's just going to make people are going to stay the same, but they're just going to lose a lot of money. And also it opens up the black market. I've seen here a lot of, you can see it in the street because there's lots of litter, Chinese cigarettes.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's incredible in that regard. And so I think it's most unfair. But should we go back to this schematic and just move a little bit more historically through, and you just explain some of this to us? Thank you.
Yeah, so MDMA was kind of right at the beginning, and then I just found it fascinating that there's so much information now about the psychedelic renaissance, and it kind of feels like this is new. And what I wanted to express with this image is it's not. These medicines have been around for a very, very long time. And an interesting question comes up in this is, what happened? These medicines came about and they were used in psychiatry to a really great effect. And you can go online and you can see papers of MDMA use, mescaline use, LSD use in this between the 50s and the 70s. And you can go have a look on Google Scholar. You can go have a look at Sci-Hub, all of these resources. The information's there. And if you pick up the papers and have a look, and you don't have to read all the science, they usually have this beginning bit, which is called the abstract. And the abstract just gives a kind of summary. They're blindingly positive. So what happened? Something happened in the 70s, late 70s, early 70s, somewhere around, where something changed, and it doesn't look like it was the medical establishment who came out and said, wait a sec, guys, these medicines are new, maybe they're addictive. No, it doesn't say that anywhere in the data. They're going to be harmful. Quite the contrary. It was used in melancholy and depression to great effect, and in different mental health conditions. So it's just very interesting if you look, and you can't really find it in the medical history. And what I found, and I didn't live through that era, is I found that it was a political issue. It was a political issue.
Okay.
Yep.
Isn't that interesting? Because when you look at the manufacture of hemp and THC back then, which was it's an extraordinary natural fiber, an incredible oil, can be used in all aspects of industry, and doesn't necessarily have to have the THC element in it. You can actually see the harvesting of hemp and synthetic fibers, which were basically owned by, I think, a big producer of synthetic fibers was Randolph Hearst, wasn't it? And the Hearst Corporation, which Citizen Kane is based around. And then you look at, he was actually funding those exploitation films, Marijuana, Devil's Weed from Hell. So he was actually demonizing it there in mainstream cinemas. And saying things about the use of that mild psychedelic, that mild psychoactive drug, that aren't necessarily true at all.
No.
And you can see it now with marijuana prescribing in Australia. If you type in to Google marijuana, you can now online have it prescribed within Australia and have it delivered to your house.
Yes, you can.
The taboo is gone. The taboo is gone. And it actually then, you start asking a question, then why does a doctor have to prescribe it? Why? If we can do this online.
They still have to make money from it.
As a monopoly?
Absolutely.
Yeah, there's always that nefarious financial aspect behind all of this. When I look at these drugs that we're seeing on the screen now, can you tell me, they all have a plant-based natural relative, don't they? These are all these drugs, they're not unique. We're going to find them in nature, aren't we?
Well, mescaline, definitely. So mescaline can come from peyote and lots of different cactuses. Ibogaine, yes, definitely. Tabananth. Then you go into LSD, which is a derivative from something called ergot, which is rye, which is fungus on rice. MDMA is actually part of the amphetamine group, and that's a derivative of things like near caffeine. It's similar. It's a stronger version of caffeine. Yes, so there are a lot of many of the precursors of modern medicine come from natural remedies.
Yeah, and then they just synthesize them because it's cheaper to synthesize them and sell them to the public than to, get them naturally. You know, and that's when all our problems start.
But do you think also in the synthesizing process that they lose something, that those natural chemical bonds being organic are far better and healthier for us?
Right. There is, so psilocybin, which is the psychedelic ingredient within what they call magic mushrooms. They've actually got the magic mushrooms and then put them in a machine called a mass spectroscoper. And what that does is it pulls out and it shows you what other compounds are inside of psilocybin mushrooms. And they actually found that it's not just psilocybin. There are these other things called phenylethylamines. And phenylethylamines are very similar to MDMA. So it's interesting that a lot of the science at the moment is this kind of golden bullet mentality of, we're going to isolate this one chemical and then we're going to put it in a trial and then we're going to patent it and then make money off that one molecule, right? but the drug firms get scared where you have two molecules, because do you patent one and patent the other, and which one's the active ingredient? And then when you look at things even like marijuana, it's got CBD, it's got THC, but it's got this whole other massive amount of other compounds within it, and they reckon that they work in kind of almost like a symphony.
Sure.
Right.
If you just have THC by itself and you don't have CBD, they say that there's almost like a psychotic element in very high doses of THC with an absence of CBD.
Right.
And it works in this yin yang position of, if you take too much THC, and this really came about with the development of a type of marijuana called skunk, where there was a skunk weed, which is like high potency skunk
I've heard
weed.
of that.
It's like,
I've heard of it.
and what it was the natural version of marijuana was very
Right.
balanced in its THC to CBD, but then they started genetically engineering it and breeding it, and the THC was a lot higher, and it led to a lot of psychiatric issues.
It does make me wonder, though, historically, when you've got incredible histories with indigenous cultures and shamans, pre-science, how they were aware of these plants. And certainly aware of like taking multiple plants in which other enzymes in that plant would assist them from overdosing or something. How did they ever get to that level of understanding it without what we know as reductionistic science?
I've studied these things for a very long time. I don't understand.
You don't know.
No, but like especially with ayahuasca, how that concoction was made, because you go in the jungle and there's hundreds of thousands of species of plant, and you're getting one which has the active ingredient, and then another which has an enzyme which increases its effect.
Right.
And how many trials and errors must have happened?
Well,
How many people died in the advent of, and why?
Or did they?
What was the motivation?
But don't they say that the gods gave them the recipe?
I think I can remember Terence McKenna, who spent much time in the Amazon, speaking that the indigenous had actually said in their oral history that the plants told them.
So the plants told them what plant to use with what.
If you think of 100,000 times 100,000 options,
it's just mind-boggling.
Mind-boggling.
Yeah.
It really makes me wonder about the notion of science versus intuition. And I mean, we live in a world which sort of debunks our intuition in many ways, but we also live with an extraordinary long history in the human hominid world, which shows that our intuition actually 9 times out of 10 when it came to our environment was spot on.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that early history of research into these substances really hit the mainstream with this gentleman, Dr. Timothy Leary. And I've told you, I think I've shown you, I own a copy of this album signed from Dr. Leary in the early 80s to me. And it was quite a moment. That's the very first record he ever put out on LSD. It's quite a fascinating thing. He released many albums at that time. He also started to get mainstream in everything, but even appeared in Paul Krasner's The Realist at that moment in time. And I just love that, this flyer of Leary's, you know, to learn how to use your head, you have to go out of your mind. I think that says everything.
Yeah.
You know, if I was a tourist coming to Sydney and they said, do you want to go to the Sydney Museum or do you want to go to the archives to see Jamie's Timothy Leary signed record?
That was a moment for me. Actually, he was very angry. He said, you're speaking while there's a speaker on stage. And when he saw the album, he just screamed in excitement. But I'm sure I've said that to you many times before. And the other thing is today, and just getting prepared for this interview, I finally found a source from remastered copy, which we're going to play on this channel, but I will get you it for your archives,
yeah.
which is the one step beyond episode where the host here,
Anthony Newley.
John Newland.
Oh, John
You're
Newland.
thinking of the English singer there.
I am, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Newland, John
John
Newland.
Newland.
Actually, this is the only documentary episode of that entire anthology series in the late 50s where they actually went down to Mexico and met the Bruja and ingested psychedelic mushrooms. But here he is in Andre Puharich's garage in the mid-50s, and there's our host undergoing tests to see if his psi ability, his telepathy was heightened.
After he
and it was heightened
mushroom.
Extensively, and that was on mainstream TV in the 50s. Can you believe that?
Yeah.
Let's just tonight, dump the whole fictional aspect of this, and your host is going to ingest LSD live and try out his psi ability. So incredible moments stepping up to the point we are now. But what I'm very fascinated with and was so excited from your lecture is you explained to us that we have major deficits in our senses in terms of the way that we perceive the world, our perception, and that maybe the use of these psychedelics can not just help us in terms of depression, but help us to reset a much more egalitarian notion to the way we live our lives, and opening up an awareness that sometimes the things that we assume and the opinions we have are not as concrete as we believe they are.
Yeah. I call it the objectivity assumption, in that it seems we feel when we look at reality that everything is this kind of concrete representation. And what the purpose of my lectures is to put a bit of doubt in there. There are lots of different, and I start with optical illusions, and there's some optical illusions which are two-dimensional pictures, and they're supposed to be absolutely flat, absolutely static. They're JPEGs, there's no movement, and you present it on a screen and it looks like it's pulsating.
So let's have a peek at one of those. So this is so fascinating to me.
And so this one, for instance, it's a static image.
That one's alive. It's like alive.
Well, when we were at your lecture, excuse me for interrupting you, when we were at your lecture and you had this projected on the screen in a room, it was nowhere near as active as it is here when it's condensed a bit on our computer. It is vibrating to hell for our eyes, but it's not doing that in real life at all.
And you can't stop it, Jamie. You can't. You know that it's flat. You know that it shouldn't be moving. But every time you look at it, it's still pulsating. You don't have an option. Your higher cortex, your like rational part of your brain, it's explained to you. It's on your screen. It's a JPEG. It's static pixels. But when you look at it, it looks like it's pulsating.
Now, the interesting thing there is, Voytek, when you actually look at it and your intent becomes, I'm going to try and make this hold, you seem to go to the event horizon. You seem to be able to go to the precipice, and you feel like you've got the movement stopping, but you haven't.
Yeah.
Isn't that interesting?
And the reason for that, Jamie, is that this is it's, and you don't have an option. It's a mechanical instance in your brain which isn't depicting objective reality. You want it to. You want to see this as a flat image, which is the objective reality, but there's a mechanical limitation within your eye which doesn't allow you to do it. So, and the lesson I try to help people understand with this is that our perception of the world isn't actually based on trying to get objective reality. we have evolved. The primary reason for our perception is for survival. It's not for objective reality. And that's what I try to highlight, in that these things exist, and they're called heuristics, which are essentially shortcuts in the brain. The brain is very energy hungry. It takes about 30% of all energy in the body and uses glucose. So we've evolved to reduce energy. So the structure of our eyes, of our brain, isn't there to give us an accurate representation of objective reality. It's there to make sure that we're in a lower energy state and that we don't waste energy, if that makes
Just
sense.
in case the flight or fight mechanism kicks in, just in case we have to go supercharged adrenaline, it's running us at our lowest level. And in that, we end up with this incredible deficit in our perception. Here is another one of these. Now, what's the story with this?
So, if you look at it, it looks like it's rotating.
Yeah.
That's right.
And again, it's another static image. And this is based upon the scientific rationale is there's a limitation within the eye. And every time you look at two contrasting colors, there looks like there's movement occurring.
Yeah.
So it's a mechanical limitation of the eye, which means that the reality that we see, the perception, isn't 100% objective.
It really makes you wonder about the world we researched, the anomalous one.
You can't believe your own eyes.
No. And there you go. Isn't that fascinating?
Yep.
Now, this got me big time.
Yeah.
It's wonderful. And it's really great in the lecture to have moments of your own intellectual epiphany when you realize you reach this point, you go, oh my God.
Yeah, and it's a wonder that we got so far in life and we haven't been picking these things out. And that's what I wanted to highlight. And I often see people and very concrete in their views. And I think these type of things kind of, wait a second, if I think that this color, that there's red in this color, and I'm sure a lot of your viewers would think there's lots of red.
Well, I'm seeing red.
There is no red in this picture.
No.
And, if that's true, then maybe some of the opinions and concrete ideas that people think they have, maybe they're not so concrete. And maybe, and that's where it kind of rolls into neuroplasticity. Maybe it's just hardened pathways in the brain which kind of refuse to change, even though there's outside information which says something different, because the brain is unneuroplastic. It sticks as it is and keeps saying that there's red in the picture. There is no red in this picture.
So what we can't do here is actually go in deep to see it. We can't go close up. Yeah. But when you do go in close up, it's the red is black. It's actually black. It's not red. So you pull out and it looks red. But if you were able to zoom in on it, you would zoom in and you would see that the red is actually black.
And it's fun. And
I know I was like, what's going on here? And is it because it's Coca-Cola and that we're making our brain is making us see red? If it was
that's frightening.
Is it? But if it was another label on there, would we still see red?
If it was Pepsi, would we see blue?
It's a bit of both. So you are primed. Okay. You are primed, and that's what I explained in the lecture as well. Every time we see Coke, we've been programmed since we were children
Yes.
to associate it with red. So there's that neural pathway. So I'm seeing Coke here
Yeah.
in a data point in my brain, and then that
Mhm.
connects to another data point, which is red. So that's the priming. And then the other bit is this mechanical limitation of the eye, in that when you see this blue,
Mhm.
the kind of blue background, and when
Right.
it has a white and black contrast,
Right.
your brain gets confused and it defaults to red. But it's
Okay.
fascinating, and I love zooming into this picture in pictures and just pulling in, and I keep on saying, I'm not tricking you. People think it's some
No,
sort of
that's
trick,
the
and
way it was. Yep.
it's just, that's what it is. There is no red in that picture.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, when you were saying before, if it can digress back and, everything, no matter how objective you are, it all comes back to you personally.
Mhm.
And, about 35 is the time that those neural pathways start to harden. What in the hell is there for us? And I'm 65 this year. Is this a muscle I can exercise, or has this thing reached a point where
You're cooked, mate.
it's
We're
really
cooked.
difficult
We're done.
to actually get that plasticity
Jamie, you
occurring?
need to take the psychedelic medicine twice a day.
Twice a
Okay,
day.
and this will cure you. But this is where medicine is going. This is where medicine is going. I'm 39 now, so I'm over the hill in that neuroplastic
But do you think it could have a metaphorical or a similarity to a muscle, and that if we don't exercise it enough, and we've all fallen into this notion of immediacy and comfort and routine, we're breaking away from the notion of novelty, and we've become very sedentary. And we sort of, in a sense, seem to be going over the same space and way every day. It's very ritualistic. Is there any point in there saying, hey, I don't want to use psychedelics, but is there some way of me regaining that neuroplasticity by just always, we're researching every day, we're always inquiring. Does that help? Is it like a muscle, or do we need more assistance?
Jamie, I think a lot of it relates into what you know as Jamie almost represents you as a person. And what I've learned in psychology is you kind of build an ego around what you know and what you believe. And the problem with this changing thing is it causes something called cognitive dissonance, which if you hear something contrary to what you believe, in psychology, it feels almost like an attack on yourself. So it's difficult. You kind of feel like, you want to hear confirmation. You want to hear confirmation of the neural pathways that are already in your brain. And there's something called confirmation bias. It's when people go up and look at the news, they tend to look for news which already fits into their narrative. Yeah. And that's why you get a lot of people either going into, the left wing, or I'm not a big fan of that left wing, right wing thing, but stuff which confirms their belief already.
Robert Anton Wilson had an expression that the prover proves what the thinker thinks.
Yeah.
But it still means that you're isolated in your own reality tunnel.
Yeah.
And no matter how exotic or far-fetched the notion of reality is to you, that you will always find supporting evidence for it, whether it's there in reality or not. You'll find some. We really live in an age of so much disinformation and so much noise that it's totally possible to be able to find that supportive evidence very rapidly. Are there things we can do outside of that pharmaceutical, neurological, plant-based psychedelic world that have any effect on our neuroplasticity? Can we do things like, I know that you're fond of Buckminster Fuller, and for him to be an original thinker around his 30s, he decided that he was going to break down the semantics of language and use words in a very different way to the way they're normally constructed in sentences to, again, gain a new sort of neuroplasticity on reality.
Yeah. So it's a holy grail, isn't it? And the thing with that in healthcare is then when that is a holy grail of trying to get this neuroplasticity, people try to sell you things, and people will sell you machines. People will sell you, God knows what. And that's historically based on the snake oil salesman. It's people in desperation are really, you can charge them a lot of money, and I saw that in my career in pharmacy, unfortunately. So what actually works? Stuff that's free. There's something called holotropic breathwork, which is very interesting, and that's supposedly can help with neuroplasticity, and there's some thoughts maybe it can induce a type of inherent psychedelic state.
Right.
There is another thing which a good friend of yours, DJ HDD, brought me into, which was this idea of stroboscopics, and that blew my mind. I've, up until a certain point in my life, I was very, I think, dogmatic in healthcare, and medicine was the way. And then David came up and showed me the fact that you can achieve these states through flashing a light in your eye. And I'd seen kind of hints of it on the internet, and I was just, swipe left or whatever. And I tried it, and it blew me away. I hallucinated. I temporarily, just through this light flashing in my eyes, and then now it's coming out, and you can type again stroboscopics into Google Scholar and into Sci-Hub, and there's scientific papers coming out saying it can help neuroplasticity. So,
and, very similar in my day for the work of Brian Geisen and William Burroughs in the Dream Machine, which again was just a really simple device that you actually popped like a shield with open and covered areas on your turntable, hit 78, and there was a light in the middle of it, and it was that light flashing on your retinas that actually recreated something similar to REM sleep, the dream state in a conscious mind.
Yeah, and the science behind that is very clear, and they know exactly why it happens. It's essentially, it's called an interference pattern. So it's your optical nerve is transmitting into your brain at a frequency of around 5 to 50 megahertz, and all the light is doing is flashing at that same frequency, and it essentially confuses the optical nerve, and the brain throws up kind of like a screensaver. Because it's confused, it doesn't know what to do. It's completely temporary. But again, the reason why I add that into the lecture is we kind of start off with these optical illusions, which are quite simple, and then I pull in this machine and I say, well, okay, we've seen these kind of small inklings of things might not be what they seem, and there's a bit of a glitch or an anomaly there. Let's try this. And people do it, and I've seen maybe 400 or 500 people, and it's a little bit of like a guilty pleasure when people come out of it, and the look on their face, they're just in wonder, because they've been in this like objectivity assumption all of their life of things. There's a door here, there's a dog here, there's a light here, and everything's very regimented. And then all I'm doing is flashing a light in their eye, and they've seen a spaceship. They've seen grass grow. They've seen, and I'm very lucky to be doing what I'm doing. Someone kind of said, I've got the best job in the world. And I didn't believe it at first, but I'm starting to think that.
I think you've got an incredibly difficult job, but you've got an important job. And I'd call it not just a job. I think it's a calling with you. I see it rarely in people, but I think you are desperately motivated to make sure more people are aware of this. And it's not that thing of just breaking the limitations on perception. It's its healing pathways.
Yeah.
I mean, we're not going to go into any deep discussion about what's occurred globally in the last couple of years, because we're on YouTube primarily with this cast. But the depression that I'm seeing, again, with that term post-traumatic stress disorder, the whole world, especially Western civilization, for the first time, is suffering from shock. I'm seeing more suicides. I'm seeing just a lot of desperation out there. What is depression? What do you see depression is? Is it purely a chemical point of view?
No. Look, it's very difficult to, are we a biochemical in nature in our brain, or is it our environment? And people, psychiatrists, like everyone's argued this for forever, and it's really a bit of both. But my belief is, firstly, it's the environment. And if anyone ever talks to me about depression, it's because we've evolved. Okay, we've evolved through time in being in a good state, and it's just in the recent 50 years, and I'd probably even say the recent 10 years, where our environment has massively changed from what we've evolved within, that depression rates in Australia, so 1 in 7 people are taking an SSRI. Do you know that? 1 in 7
Say that number again.
1 in 7 people are taking an SSRI in Australia.
No, I didn't know that. That's
1 in
incredible.
4 Americans are taking a psychotropic. Do you know that?
No.
Isn't that unbelievable? And that figure really, that inspired me to like go down this route of like, that's just not. And and whether
what are the numbers like in Britain, where you herald from? What are the numbers like there?
Britain is lower than Australia. So Australia is next to the US, and weirdly, like the US has psychotropic medicine advertising on TV, right? So that's a big. They're pushing it on people
all the time.
And then Australia is second, and then the UK, it comes further down, and it's free. Like it's definitely a weird thing. I think.
So do you know which countries are the lowest? Like they they're not taking and you know what I mean, that they're not engaging in that kind of behavior.
That's in my lecture, but it's places like India and stuff. They don't get diagnosed with depression.
Maybe they haven't. See, here's my thing. Here's my take on stuff like that. They don't have time. To get depressed. No, seriously.
When you've got to survive.
When you've got to survive every day and you're looking for food and shelter, do you know what I mean? You just don't have time for stuff like that.
That's a really hard line with a clinically depressed person.
Yeah,
but
I
understand
absolutely,
that we're living in
an
entitled culture.
When you're dodging bullets to go to the corner store to get a loaf of bread and some milk, you kind of have a different view on life. And, your family.
You've probably got better neuroplasticity,
Your family and community is probably more important than getting lip fillers and, carrying a $6,000, Prada bag. And do you know what I mean? It's that kind of stuff.
It's a Western modern disease.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
That's what I wanted to know.
That's what I'm, and like I said, I look around and I think to myself, why do these people not have such high incidence? It's like, because they don't have the time, because they're trying to survive from day to day. We have a lot of time on our hands, you know what I mean? And
the brain never stops.
The corporations, they're grooming us all the time. They're telling us all the time that we need to have this to feel fulfilled. We need to drive this kind of car to show the world who we are.
We need that Uber meal.
You need to be eating out. You need to wear these shoes, these clothes to show the world who you are. And so, the anxiety would probably build up in you if you're a little bit, inclined to be impressed by stuff like that. And so you're going to be, always thinking about, you need a new bag, you need new shoes, you need a new outfit because you've already been seen in that. And so, you're just getting away from community and what's really, really important to you and connections with people, and just going totally into yourself. And then when you're not getting, these things because you can't afford them, or they're unattainable, then you start to get depressed, because you're not fulfilling and being who you should be, that, they're grooming you to be.
Yeah.
That's
It's
it. I'm done now.
It's skewed the value proposition, right? It's skewed what
Yeah.
they are after. And
Yes.
what I try to talk to people about is, instead of thinking with this is what I should think I have, this is what I need to have, this is all this stuff which is fed to us through advertising.
Yep.
Go with this. Just
Yeah.
forget this, because
Yeah.
this is being, outside.
Manipulated. It's been manipulated all the
You see
time.
adverts everywhere. You see
Yeah.
adverts absolutely everywhere.
Yeah.
And they wouldn't be there if they weren't effective.
Of course.
So forget
But
about
now
them. Go
they're
with
carrying the adverts in their hand. They're looking at this stuff day in and day out. They never take their I see people, I should just run them over when I see no, seriously, they're crossing the street, and instead of watching where they're going, where they're walking, and if a car has actually seen them step off the curb, make eye contact to make sure that car stops, they're looking at their phone. It's like, what is so important on that phone that you have to be, taking your life in your own hands every time you cross the street? What is wrong with you people?
Yeah.
Like it's just, I can't believe it. And all that it's sending into their brain is like, why you're so inadequate, why you're not making it, why you're not successful, because you don't have this, and you're not buying that, and not using this, and you're not eating that. It's just bizarre.
Can I come in at the tail end of that and just say, do you think that
I'm exhausted.
because of this contradiction in our society, where we believe we're connected, but we're connected in isolation, do you think that we're losing this sense of our community, our social life, our true social ability to communicate? And I think that communication must be healthy in terms of neuroplasticity, the old tribal communication.
Jamie, so when I was in pharmacy, I dealt with elderly people, and just the worst thing was loneliness. And people would come to see me specifically because they go to the doctor, and the doctor's like, well, yeah, you get 15 minutes and then you got to go. Yeah. Whereas they'll come to me and they can have a long conversation, and it's the only conversation they have in their entire week or whatever. So loneliness is massive. And I really think, and what I've started to learn is, I'm starting to respect people more who drive community and drive society in the other direction towards that attention. Sure. And that's what I want to do as well. I want to start building a community of like-minded people who kind of have similar thoughts and work together, and kind of just have that understanding that, having these, I think the key rule is what you want is not necessarily the best thing for you.
No,
right?
It's not what you need.
And these phones, have you ever used TikTok?
No.
No. We don't have mobile phones. Obviously, after that rant, I don't have a mobile phone.
Just use someone else's phone and use it for an hour. You will be amazed. I thought I could look at it for 5 minutes. I got drawn into it for 3 hours. And I had to kind of pull it away, and it was kind of,
they're a drug. They are, phones are a drug. Social media is a drug.
I mean, I think there's a really elusive point here, because I know lots of filmmakers that see the power of TikTok and the power of getting information to people very quickly in this delivery service to a large number of people. But unfortunately, at the end of the day,
it's in the hands of the wrong people.
But I also believe that you hit the nail on the head, that it is very addictive.
Oh, absolutely.
And it's addictive on this level, like poker machine psychologists would have made it addictive. And so what we do is, it's like, I can remember saying, I have never used cocaine in my life because I'm a working class boy, and I'm always going to stay working class. And if I'm going to put anything up my nose that resembles cocaine, it'll be Ajax, and that's no good for you at all. But I also decided no phone. And when AI came in, I brought pads and pencils. And I said, I'm not going to use AI for anything. I'm going to start pulling deep into my own imagination and find that is there incredible things that I can create from within inside myself, not outside. Yeah. And I think that's why we're still breathing, walking around, approaching 65. But it's dreadful how these things have really.
Look, all this stuff, all these this technology is great. They're great tools to have. I mean, we've got our laptops, and we do podcasts, and we've got the internet at home. What we don't have is a phone following us everywhere. I don't need I don't need it. I never needed it before. I don't need it now.
We don't think we're that exceptional.
I'm not that important that I have to be able, that I have to be contactable 24/7. I'm telling you, really. So, and I don't want to conduct my business, my personal private business, out when I'm shopping or when I'm visiting with friends or when I'm in the movies or when I go somewhere. I want to be
focused on that moment.
And in that moment and totally engaged in what I'm doing and who I'm with. I don't need to have a phone with me to distract me every 5 minutes, somebody going, what are you up to? What do you think I'm up to? I'm living my life. What do you want? Oh, I just rang to say hi. Oh, what, you're bored? You're bored, so you're bugging me. Have you got something to tell me, something important? If not, leave me alone.
You're out of control.
No, seriously, I told you I was tired. But seriously, and I have, and then people say to me, oh, but what if there was an emergency? It's like, well, there used to be emergencies before we had mobiles, and they used to find us when they needed to. And I say to people, how many emergencies have you had, with your phone? And they say, oh, well, not any really. It's like, well, we don't have that many emergencies. And when there is a real emergency, they will come and find you, believe me. So, and they won't need your mobile phone.
Poor old Voytek.
There you go.
He's exhausted as
poor
well.
Everybody's copping this one. Sorry.
I'm restricting myself from replying because we could just spiral on that.
Let's not.
We'll wait till
let's not do this to the audience.
We've got to get to your retreat with the buckyball, and she can take the center stage there and just go.
Anyway,
now there's some other interesting material you've got up here before. Should we pop that up? And
which one, darling?
This one really fascinates me.
Oh, that's
The notion. Can you walk us through this? And I'm sorry we're a bit erratic tonight with you, Voytek. We love you deeply.
Right. In 2009, the UK government thought, well, it's about time, since the 1970s, we should really look and review how drugs are scheduled in the UK.
God, that long since they've done it. Wow.
Yeah. And especially because novel chemical entities came on, which means people started making money by getting, let's say, the ecstasy molecule and adding a little extra molecule on it. So it was kind of the same thing. It worked the same as ecstasy, but because it had a little molecule on it, it wasn't in the law books.
It did what? Probably did nothing.
No, it did the same thing. Right?
Yeah, but it didn't do anything more. It didn't add to it, really. But they just put a molecule in it. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
Right. So it's the same thing. They put a molecule in it, and it really allowed people to bypass the law. So you've got all these drug dealers in God knows where who are manufacturing novel chemical entities which replicated things like cocaine or amphetamine and essentially there was an influx of it, and the government was like, oh, we don't know what to do, we need to review this. So 2009 UK government contract this bloke called Professor David Taylor Nutt at Imperial College, and then said, hey, can you have a look at, just take fresh eyes, right? Let's just say, forget about the past, and let's just pull up this thing, and let's just go, if we made new classifications where like Schedule A, which is usually like heroin in this country, just forget about all that, and then just do a reclassification. And he went out and he did this incredible paper. He did an extremely huge amount of work, and he referenced hundreds of other papers, and he compiled it into this, which is basically an independent scientific analysis. It's a governmental committee, and he published it in something called The Lancet. And it's important to understand what The Lancet is. The Lancet is a medical journal, and it just means whenever an article is published there, hundreds, thousands of medical professionals, so doctors, read the article and they argue against it. And if their arguments are successful, they have to take it down. And what happened was this document came out with this picture, and hundreds and thousands of doctors argued, and it never got taken down. So it means that general consensus of medicine is saying this. Oh, sorry. And they're saying
those mobile phones. Okay.
And this is what he came out with. And the first thing he said was relative harm.
Yeah.
So which of these medicines, and you can see here right at the top, is alcohol. It has the highest
That's
relative
number
harm.
one, is it? Right.
And it's the most legal drug in numerous
So
forms.
the dark is harm to the user. And then the other is harm to others. So
the reason why that's important with alcohol is there's a lot of domestic abuse involved with alcohol. And I seem to remember a statistic about crime. There's a huge amount of crime which is performed whilst people are under the influence.
Sure.
And then harm to others. So so domestic abuse, but then harm to oneself. So with alcohol, you get things like liver cirrhosis. It's really, really bad. You get this thing that it loosens your esophageal sphincter, so acid flows up, so you get gastric esophageal reflux disease. Like lots of not very nice things. And anyway, so he did this kind of statistical analysis. He did it with all these drugs, and then he finds, alcohol is right at the top. Heroin is below that, which seems kind of unbelievable. Crack cocaine, amphetamine, cocaine, tobacco, marijuana, GHB, benzodiazepines, ketamine, methadone, and he goes all the way down to the bottom, and you can see the last one there is mushrooms.
Right.
Big mushrooms. And they're so maligned, and at that point in 2010 they're classified as an illegal substance, no medicinal use whatsoever. That, and then you put it relative, and what this doesn't show as well is the potential good of these medicines as well. Right. Since this was published, well, when it was published in 2010 in the Lancet, he presented it to the government, and they were so shocked by it, they sacked him.
Oh my God.
They asked him to do it. They hired him, and then they didn't like the results.
Yeah. So they got rid of him.
Their neuroplasticity was set for it.
And this was 2010, and I remember when it happened, and it's an abomination. What should have happened is the UK government should have looked at that and gone, wow, we have to rejig absolutely everything. And the reason why they sacked him was they didn't want to do it. They didn't want to go through
it's too
all
hard.
of that. They had a status quo bias, which is we just keep on doing what we're doing. And Professor David Taylor Nutt, he's one of the most respected neuropsychopharmacologists in the world. Right. And it kind of was an in-joke in the pharmacy community. We were trained in LSD being this evil, no-use drug whatsoever. But then Professor David Taylor Nutt said, in comparison to alcohol, it has 1/100 of the harm.
Yeah.
It actually has, and what we're finding out now is the potential benefits of it relative to things like alcohol are phenomenal. And that's where the Renaissance is, right? So Ben Sessa, who that first image Jamie pulled up, he coined the phrase. He coined the phrase psychedelic Renaissance some 2-3 years ago, and he actually started a company. And he's an interesting chap. He started a company in the UK called Awaken, and they opened up ketamine clinics in and around London. And they're extremely successful. So people walk in, they have an intravenous infusion of ketamine, and they have a psychedelic experience, and it changes their neuroplasticity temporarily, gives them a window, and their lives change. And you can get ketamine therapy in Australia, but luckily now we've got the medicalization of psilocybin and MDMA. And now it's legally available. It's not readily available. You can't just go to your GP. You need to be referred to a psychiatrist, and then there's charges.
Yeah,
it's definitely a step.
They're still making money off it, aren't they?
Can you grow it? Can you cultivate it? Can you pick it legally? Is that legal?
In the ACT,
right? Isn't that crazy? Everything's allowed, right in the capital where all the pollies are and everyone. But for the rest of us, I mean, that was the height of where all pornography was shot at one stage.
And fireworks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, what is this here? Explain this to us too.
I often get a question from people, and they ask, what is the difference between different psychedelics? Can I take LSD and will I see yellow submarines? Can I take ayahuasca, which is DMT, and will I see spirit animals? And so I drew this table up just to give people a little bit more of a better view. And they've done retrospective analysis of the effects of these different medicines, and the effects are very, very similar. And the reason why in my lectures I talk about priming and framing and psychosomatism and placebo, and that may sound all complicated and long-winded, but essentially it's all about the brain works on a principle of expectations. It's always trying to predict what it's going to feel. So it always kind of makes our reality through our predictions. And what they found with LSD is people, because of these preconceived ideas, would have images of flashing lights and aliens and different things. And they found it was associated with the word LSD, in that people think it's kind of technological and sciencey, whereas psilocybin, because it's from mushrooms, people would have these trips where they'd be in nature and it would be all natural and different things. But what the science is saying, and it's quite robust now, is the actual effect is very, very similar. And but the main difference is the fact that LSD and another one at the bottom there called mescaline, which is the one that Aldous Huxley took, are very long trips. So if you take them, you're going to be in a neuroplastic.
That's a double shift. That's hardcore.
Yeah, and I've met people who've gone, and it gets a bit boring after a while.
Right. Slightly, get me off this merry-go-round.
I think that's a brilliant table, though, to explain things to people. That's an astounding table. I'm really glad that you've done that.
But the shortest one is, what was that one? That was 15 to 30 minutes,
Yeah, so it's DMT, which is...
DMT,
yeah, so people use this thing called changa. They smoke it. And also what's becoming popular, and a hairdresser offered it to me, was a vape pen, had DMT inside of it.
Right, wow.
Which is a little bit strong for people. So it tends to be a hit, and it goes straight in. Psilocybin, for instance, takes about 30 minutes to start working. Same with LSD, where DMT, if you smoke it, goes straight into your lungs, and then you're at takeoff. So it's quite a big shot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
So
think people should exercise care when
Oh,
approaching these
absolutely.
drugs.
I couldn't do it.
Make sure you've got someone there with you, but also something that I've observed in my mental health work. If you're, on that cusp of teenage years and stuff, and there's a predisposition to possibly something on the spectrum, let's just use, for example, schizophrenia or something.
It's bipolar.
It's gonna come out at some stage, but these drugs seem to bring that out a lot more rapidly. Is that a delusion in what I've seen in my time, or have you experienced that as well too? Because I've seen some people do have some really precarious moments on psychedelics.
So, Jamie, this is what I do at the moment. People come to me and they say, I am at my wit's end. I have used every different antidepressant under the sun. I've done TMS. I've done electroconvulsive therapy. I've done all of these things.
Like giving me lobotomy.
That would be the next step. That would be the next step. Yeah. And they asked me these questions, and 100%, there are massive exclusions to these things. There's some people who should definitely not be taking
Never
this.
do them.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's very, very good to consult the current scientific literature, but if you don't want to do that, go talk to a healthcare professional.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, what I was going to say was that you're probably talking about, before, when it was, you used to go and buy it from a drug dealer, and you didn't know how much of a dose was on there and what was mixed in with it too. So sure, they were probably having but we're talking about going to mental health professionals with proper dosage and, proper instructions on how to do it and when to do it. And, and they've got to look into your background and see if you're okay to do it, You're talking about stuff that you're buying off the street. I mean,
well, not necessarily so.
Jamie has a big point in when these people get very, very desperate, and you can go to a healthcare professional and they estimate that psilocybin or MDMA therapy for one dose, and you may need multiple, is going to cost around $25,000.
Well, that's
well, who's got that money?
So then people will end up going, like we were talking with cigarettes, to the black market.
Yeah.
And it's very, very important that we look after these people, because it's going to happen. You can't just say people aren't going to go buy cigarettes from China. It happens.
They will. Absolutely.
Right? So you have to have harm reduction systems help these people, and the government's doing pretty good at the moment, and they have these kind of like drug testing systems, which is great. And I just think that there should be more places where people can do this under a safe environment as well. Because
how does somebody, I don't know, would it be a psychiatrist justify $25,000 for one? How? What do they need? A new car? A family trip? What's the go?
A helicopter and a yacht, actually, which is golden.
That's not right. They should put a cap on. The government should put a cap on it. They really should. They should have, a scale of how much you charge for, and thousands of dollars is just ridiculous, because of course only the people with money are going to be able to afford that, and people with no money are going to have to suffer.
What the truth is,
so wrong.
It is a bit of a class war, and we've demonized for too long those people self-medicating outside of the system. And put yourself in their shoes.
Absolutely.
I mean, there's a large number of people out there that financially cannot survive. They've come from abusive backgrounds. They're in very non-motivating work, if they're in work at all. And every night is a nightmare.
Yeah.
And the only way to get through that sometimes is to self-medicate with drugs that can, I've known many street schizophrenics that were alcoholics as well. And community crisis teams want that person to detox off the alcohol before they deal with the schizophrenia, and never the twain shall meet. It's a frightening conundrum.
Yeah, it is.
One thing I forgot to do right at the beginning, and don't think us rude, I forgot to put our disclaimer in, and we should do that because the
Really?
host of Untold will freak out about what we're talking about. Let me do that for 15 seconds. I'll come back and explain it. And this is nothing against you. One moment. And you know what I'm going to say there? That the opinions expressed are not those of Untold Radio, but certainly the hosts have no problem with Voytek's.
Never believe fully in anybody else's BS. I don't care if it's Roger Nish, the Pope, L. Ron Hubbard, Al Gore, George Bush, or I don't care who it is. Don't swallow all their belief system totally. Don't accept all of their bullshit, all their BS. The second rule is like unto the first. Don't believe totally in your own BS. Which means that, as Bucky Fuller said, the universe consists of non-simultaneously apprehended events. Non-simultaneously. The universe consists of non-simultaneously apprehended events, which means any belief system or reality tunnel you've got right now is going to have to be revised and updated as you continue to apprehend new events later in time, not simultaneously. This is the natural function.
Yeah, that's the great Robert Anton Wilson, and that's the disclaimer I want. I'm sorry to be rude there. I forgot to put it at the start, and we might end up in strife. We're always a bit rambunctious. We're too excited to get you on.
Yep.
But what you're doing, I have full belief and commitment to. And I think that you are doing it for all the most incredibly genuine reasons.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I think there's one more very interesting image we need to look at here.
That's the bottom one. Yep.
Is this.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know in the human brain, we've got more inhibitory neurons than any other animal?
Why is that?
What's inhibitory neurons, if you want to explain that?
Right. So we've got a lot of impulses inside of us. So we evolved from like primordial beings, right? So like animals.
Yeah.
Which, I look at my dog, and when he sees some food, there's no higher cortex aspect. He doesn't think, oh, is it the right food, or is it going to make him sick? He just goes for it, right? It's like an impulse. He sees something, there's an impulse, and then he goes in action. And with humans, we've evolved the higher cortex, and we've got a lot more neurons, but it means that we can suppress those kind of primordial feelings inside. We've got this system which is inhibitory, which pushes down on all of the neural activity in our brain. And it's kind of further explained in that, if you have ever had kind of ruminating thoughts, it's kind of like an uncontrolled storm in the mind. And what these inhibitory neurons do is just they kind of calm it down, and they're there as kind of a control mechanism, because things can get quite chaotic. And the picture that you see here is a human, quite a few humans. It's an average of their activity of their brain in something called an MRI machine, which is a machine which can look at the activity within the brain. And on the left-hand side, which is the A image, which is kind of a bit white, you can see it in its normal state. The different colors represent, so purple up at the top is the occipital lobe, which is like right at the back, which processes a lot of the optical information coming in. And then the yellow is kind of the auditory bit, the red, so they're different parts of the brain. And what you can see in the image is that the communications are very sporadic, in that there's a lot of inhibition happening, so that the brain, in its day-to-day activity of, if you want to drive, you don't want to be thinking of a monkey in a circus when you're 12 years old. But that is in comparison to image B, which is someone's mind on psilocybin or a psychedelic.
Right.
And what happens is interconnectivity between the different parts of the brain. There's different information packages which are being sent from the auditory part to the occipital to the optical part, and it's making it talk to one another. It's making it kind of file itself and able to kind of work itself out in the temporary psychedelic state. So then when you revert back to the normal state, it operates a bit better. And the only analogy I can really come up with is, I don't know if you remember on old computers, there was this idea of defragging.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
And what defragging was when you record on a hard drive, you've only got a certain amount of space in a square, and it would record a line up at the top, which was photos, and then it would record another bit, which is your videos, and then another bit, which is your documents. And it isn't stored in the most efficient way.
Mm-hmm.
What defragging did was it just pushed all those lines up and organized it in a way that it was more efficient and gave you more room,
more space
to record other things. And that's exactly what's happening in the mind, with psychedelics. It allows this connectivity, so you can kind of shift and categorize your thoughts and the stuff that's in your brain a little bit more efficiently in a more compact manner, and it opens you up to being able to have new pathways. So the old pathways, they still exist. They're kind of a bit more efficient. They're a bit more kind of put away, but it gives you this space to learn other things.
Right. Yeah.
We need to start to look at the psychedelic experience the same way we look at our culinary experience.
Yes.
That these things are actually natural to the planet, and that they're there for us to ingest, and that our brain wouldn't operate in this way unless they were part of our whole life system from day one.
Yeah.
And as you were saying, they're allegories to defragging. It's incredible how we have created our whole sort of neurological system outside of our bodies in a technological way that is very metaphorical to what happens to us. I mean, any computer, after a couple of years, starts to get so slow and dragging, just like the entropy of our neurological pathways. And then you either need to turn that whole thing off, clear it up, or reboot it to actually get the life back in it. And I think in many ways we're so unobservant of what we're creating in front of us. And we need to go inside to understand. I mean,
so it's like we never serviced our brain, and it's like this is like a service. It's a you know what I mean? Yeah. There you go. I don't know, but if I could do it.
And I don't want to overblow it, and all of this should be taken with I think reverence is the word.
Yes,
absolutely. Religious. I don't want the religious connotation, but it's just it has to be dealt with respect.
Absolutely.
It cannot be jumped on, and because part of this is you could if you're rejigging memories, you might lose certain connections or discipline or certain behaviors that you think is really, really important. So it's very important after these are taken that you kind of reinforce things that you want to keep. And that's
for sure.
It's not for everyone. I think looking at the science and then talking to people who know about it, but I can't understate its importance. I think in the future it's going to become, in the next 10 years, I think it's going to become a more common thing, because it will first start in depression. It's already moving into addiction, smoking cessation, alcohol. If you look into Alcoholics Anonymous, Bill Watson, what was his first name? Bill Wilson, who started Alcoholics Anonymous. He actually came off alcohol with the use of LSD, and that's a historical fact now.
Okay.
So these have been used very effectively, and I think as time goes on, they'll find more uses. But unfortunately, some drug firms are kind of like looking into like using psychedelics for things like hair loss.
Yeah, no, that's that's on the outside of your brain. This stuff works on the inside of your brain, not what's growing out on the outside.
And it doesn't matter
yeah.
about. I mean, when you said you're actually at the hairdresser, I looked at you and thought, why?
What, a number 2? What is that? A number 1 blade that you have? Seriously?
Why would you even worry?
Why don't you do it yourself?
Voytek, how can
you can't see the back of it?
All right, okay.
Voytek, I know you are non-stop with this,
Yeah.
and you're extremely motivated. You've also got a practice where you're working very intensely with people suffering a whole myriad of stuff on the spectrum. Is there a way for people to get in touch with you? Is there a way for people to help support you build your community? I mean, you're wanting to put together some sort of retreat in a way where people can actually come and consult with you. So how do people get in touch with you online?
You could just type my name, so it's written there, Voytek Bereza, into Google, and I come up at the top because
there's not many of you. Yeah.
But I think the main way is the lectures, and the lectures is really a forum and getting people talking about these things. And
I think it's important that people should know that they can actually get in touch with you and get you to do one of these lectures for them.
And we're looking to do as many. Well, I'm looking to do as many as I can over in Australia as possible. At the moment, I'm doing a few in East Sydney, and we're looking for other places. So definitely.
So that's up on your website. If anybody look, So if they go to your website, then they will see.
As well. If you type them into Google, it pops up.
And they can see where you're doing these lectures, and they can go along to them.
We should put a link in the show notes.
I'll find the and put a link at the bottom there.
I also was handed this the night of your lecture, which is about Macquarie University doing a whole look into people who might want to use a psychedelic and doing a bit of an understanding about that. Do you know much about that?
Yeah,
there are planning on taking psychedelics. Yeah,
there are so many clinical trials now of psychedelics in Australia. There's so much interest from academia, all over. If you go to Monash, if you go to all of the universities, they've got someone who's doing this. So, and I think if I have any last word in what we're saying is, if you are very, very desperate and you're at the end of your tether, go to one of those universities, get in contact with one of the clinical trials, and hopefully there'll be someone who can help. If not, you can get in contact with someone like me. And then if not, there's also the ability to go abroad. And I don't think many people talk about that.
What does that mean?
To go overseas.
Oh, abroad.
And do it safely. Yeah.
Go overseas, yeah.
Okay. That's really important information. Now, you were discussing before this whole thing about intuition, and we spoke about the history there in the Amazon. And, of course, you are on Untold Radio, where we deal with the world of the
anomalies. Can I just say that actually a friend of ours went... She came here years ago, and we screened one of these.
She's suffered a lot of depression.
And we screened one of these documentaries that was about psychedelics and going into
ayahuasca
into the Amazon and stuff. And she actually saved up, and she didn't tell us. She saved up all her money, and she had a myriad of problems. All kinds of things are happening, physical and psychological. And she actually went. I don't know, was it last year or the year before? And she went to the Amazon, and she went to she had ayahuasca, and she's come back. She's just totally transformed. And she emailed us. We hadn't heard from her for a little while because she's moved away too, but living her best life now. And she just said that it's changed her life, and she was so thankful that we'd actually shown her that documentary. And she saved up and went overseas and did it, and she's just totally a new person, So,
she's thriving.
absolutely thriving. So it's we've seen this in effect. We've seen it in how it's changed. Someone who was literally at her wit's end and had all these medical, physical problems, arising out of the psychological stuff, and there you go.
I think what you deserve is to have a few people out there that are able to afford that $25,000 get philanthropic with you.
Yeah, absolutely.
And make sure that some money comes towards you, because one of the things I worry about with you is you have a very gregarious heart, and you give of yourself to people, and I don't want to see you being exploited for your absolute
Voytek will be
empathy.
All right. He's not going to let himself.
Very few people have that empathy.
Yeah.
But where I was going to go was, in our program, Untold Radio, we deal with lots of anomalous stuff. And one of the interesting things there is this notion that there could be a relic hominid out there, the Sasquatch, the Yowie, and the Yeti. And there are two camps, especially in the US, where people want to see it as this relic primate. This is a physical thing. There's all this other evidence that it may exist on some other quantum level. And the people that go back, there are lots of examples of like people who have come from hunting communities, generations of them.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to tackle anything out there. When they finally get this thing in their rifle sights, they have consensus reality collapse. They realize it looks more like a human than anything else, and they can no longer go back in the woods, or they never go back armed again. Yet the other camp that has been dealing with this broader, what we, for lack of a better term, has a supernatural paradigm, they have started to get very meditative. And they are always going into a form of trance before they go out there, whatever trance turns out to be.
Mm-hmm.
And they go out with the best intent. They don't carry weapons. 9 times out of 10, they don't carry photographic equipment. They don't care anymore about getting evidence for anyone else. And because of that intent, they are having the most extraordinary experiences that are so existential. And in many ways, those experiences, even though they're conscious and they're not going through a psychedelic experience, those experiences sound very much like the LSD experience, the psilocybin experience, the MDA experience, the stroboscopic experience. It's rather wild. But anyway, we've got a conference we've got to throw an advertisement in for. Here's a little bit of interest to do with this.
Are you ready to uncover the mysteries of Bigfoot? Join us for SquatchCon Idaho 2023. This year, we're bringing the magic directly to your screen, or join us in person. Witness the world premiere of the enhanced Paul Freeman Bigfoot footage. Doug Hychek discovered a secret within this enhanced video you'll have to see to believe. Hear from an all-star panel of Bigfoot experts like Dr. Jeffrey Meldrum, Cliff Barackman, Brian King-Sharp, and Michael Freeman. But that's not all. Get exclusive online bonuses such as Bigfoot-themed wallpapers, a Bigfoot coloring book, an interactive Bigfoot quiz, Squatch Nut Field Guide, get a copy of the Freeman Bigfoot Files ebook, and more. Whether you attend in person or watch it live online, you'll be part of an unforgettable experience. Don't miss out on this unique opportunity. Secure your spot today. SquatchCon Idaho 2023. Step into the unknown.
You know what?
Maybe you should
secure
watch it
your
with
spot.
you. I
You know,
would
we need to
actually-
see it streaming. But you know what? I don't know how you feel looking at that, and the wallpaper and the colouring in book are highly questionable. I don't want to wake up to that wallpaper. But there's no way, whether this is real or not, that can't extend your neuroplasticity.
Oh, yeah.
Just considering its existence.
That'd throw you into another world view for sure.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
So anyway, and one day we're going to get together at your retreat, and I'm going to
Yes.
take you wandering into the bush, and we're going to have an experience of our own as well.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
Yeah.
We cannot thank you enough.
And we might
for
even
your...
come across a yowie.
Listen, watch it. I'll bite you in a minute. But I want to thank you again for your generosity of heart and who you are and we will always be there to support you, Voytek. You're one of the
Anything you need.
most
yes.
astounding individuals we've ever come across.
Yep.
And people have spoken to us about episode 6.
Yeah.
An Indigenous friend of ours actually
Veronica
said
and
that was
Kerry,
the
yeah.
calmest.
She just keeps going back to that one all the time.
And she uses your voice to just meditate
And
on.
she's a hardcore woman.
Yeah,
I'll
yeah,
tell
she
you
is a
what.
full-on activist.
Ooh,
And so there's just something
she'll have
about
your guts for God. is
there's
that one.
something about the way you talk that states to me an absolute genuineness and authenticity
Mhm.
and a really deep caring for the people around you. And empathy is not something you can buy. It's a rare commodity in today's world.
I did see on the bus the other day that they had, be kind, do something kind. It's like, do we really have to be told to do that? Shouldn't we be like that anyway?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I need to get you a sedative tonight, something out of the
Anyway.
garden, just to quiet you down a bit. Anyway,
I'm waiting for the hypodermic in the side of the
yeah,
neck.
yeah. Just like flatliners. Bring her back in 30 minutes. Just have a
Get a
break
bit
here.
respite.
You're
Wow.
hugging her, Jamie. Pretend you're hugging her, and then
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what? There's no way I could get away with that with my
No.
wife. Anyway, I wish you a great evening and thank you so much for your time and
We
your
really
scholarship.
appreciate it.
We so
Yeah.
appreciate it. And you take good care.
And we're just out there spreading the word.
and I'll see you soon.
Absolutely.
Anything you feel like you need to say before we end tonight's broadcast?
Thank you for your time, and just community. Like in a time of atomization,
Yep.
it's important for all of us to push it the other way, and because
Absolutely.
that's the human way, right?
Yeah,
if,
it is. It is.
If the machine and the system that we're in is pulling us together, then let's go the other way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Certainly. All right.
All right.
We'll
There we go. All
take
right.
good care to everyone.
Yes.
Thank you, Voytek.
Thank you so much.
And we'll
Voytek.
see you all next week for another episode
We
of
will have another episode
Untold Radio.
with all good stuff.
But this was
This
a
was
profound
cool.
one.
Yep.
Really
Yep.
touched my heart.
See you soon.
Okay. We will be back next week.
Yeah.
And we didn't need to play anything else, did we?
No, we didn't.
No. All right. Well, we'll see you, and thank you
And
for
thank
joining
you for
us
everyone
again.
being with us. And thank you
Absolutely.
again to Voytek.
Spread the word.
Get in touch with the guy. Throw some money his way. Come on. It's the best money you'll ever spend.